Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel, and happy Halloween. In this video, we are going to be going over the top 5 mistakes that first-time home buyers make. So if you're thinking about buying your first home, this is absolutely the right video for you. These mistakes will cost you not only time and money, but also peace of mind. It can really just add stress to the entire process. So by avoiding these 5 common mistakes, you'll find the home buying process a lot easier. So let's dive into it. Hi, I'm Damian Marks, a realtor here in the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley. And if you find the content in this video to be interesting or helpful, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe. Obviously, I make this content for people just like you because I want to just start to get you as informed as you possibly can be to help you along your home buying journey. So without further ado, now let's jump into it. All right, and the first most common mistake that I see buyers and first-time home buyers alike make is not getting pre-approved for a mortgage. This one is very common, and generally I think people don't like to go get pre-approved first because they're nervous. They're scared that they're not going to actually see the numbers on their pre-approval that they want to see to get them in the house they want to get into. But I still strongly recommend doing this because then at least you know, and when you actually do get your pre-approval, you'll actually have a really good budget in mind, and you know that when you find a home that is, within your approval budget, that you can actually comfortably make those monthly payments, and you're not going to be stretched so thin that you're missing out on everything else life has to offer just to make your mortgage payments. And I know that is definitely a thought that a lot of people here have, because real estate here definitely tends to be on the higher end of the scale. Another reason why it is really important to go get a pre-approval first before you go out and start looking at homes is, let's say you do find a home that you think would be perfect for yourself or you and your family, and you want to make a move on it. Without that pre-approval, you're not going to be extremely confident in making your offer because you might not know what your finances actually look like. Another thing and reason why it's really important to have your pre-approval done is it shows sellers that you're serious, because you've done the work, you've taken the time to get their pre-approval, and they're not concerned that you're not going to be able to get your financing. Right now, because it is a little bit quieter in the market, it's not as big a deal, but because of all these rate drops, the market is going to get busier, and in a busy market, especially a really busy market, having a financing subject can really hinder you in your home buying process. So for those reasons and more, just go get your pre-approval. It's really important. And mistake number 2 I commonly see is underestimating total cost. Many buyers out there will correctly assume that the down payment you are producing is going to be the largest out-of-pocket expense you have outside of actually taking out the mortgage. However, there are other costs as well, and it's really important to be aware of these because they can start to add up fast. The largest one of these being property transfer tax, which is a tax that grows in proportion to the value of the property. Let's say you buy a $500,000 home. The property transfer tax on that is going to be $8,000. But let's say you're buying something that's, a bit more expensive. Let's say you're looking at the $2 million price point. The property transfer tax on that is going to be $38,000. That's a lot of money to, if you weren't aware of this, to have to produce. Some other costs that are going to be present are going to be your lawyer and notary fees, disbursements, which is how the property tax is divvied up, so depending on when you take possession of the home, cost of inspection, appraisals, all of these things do add up, and generally in the home buying process for my clients, I actually do generally recommend that they have about 3 to 5% of the purchase price of the home set aside for just these costs, as well as anything else that might come up. You don't want to have to completely drain your bank accounts just to make this purchase happen. You definitely want to make sure you keep some rainy day money set aside, or maybe you want to have some money for home rentals or improvements further down the road. And yeah, that's number 2. And mistake number 3, and this is a big one, and that is people tending to focus solely on the house and not the neighborhood that house is actually located in. Often when I work with, let's say, a more experienced real estate investor, they'll usually say something like, I'd rather buy an older house in a really great neighborhood. And that rings true generally always in real estate. And a big reason for that is a good location never goes out of style. Whether it's Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, Surrey, Langley, Port Moody, Maple Ridge, wherever it is, all of these areas do have some unique neighborhoods in each city, and each of these neighborhoods does generally have a bit more of a unique vibe or feel, or maybe access to certain levels of public transit or amenities or schools or rec centers, whatever it is. And it is important to kind of do some of your homework when you're actually considering which neighborhood you want to live in. Is public transit something that is important to you? Well, guess what? You're probably not going to go live in Wannock and Maple Ridge. If you're looking for, a big lot with a lot of greenery, well, guess what? You're probably not going to live anywhere near Kingsway in Burnaby. Another reason why doing your homework in neighborhoods is important is because, let's say you want to live in Brookswood because you really like how green it is and you like the really big lots, and you buy a house there. Well, let's say you find out 3 months down the road that you weren't aware of this, and 7 of your neighbors beside you have actually already agreed to assemble, and they're going to be building a low-rise building right beside where you just bought. You probably wouldn't be too thrilled about that. And so this is another thing, to actually ask the agent you're working with to actually do a bit of homework about development in the neighborhoods you're looking at, because development is happening everywhere. And, we do have a lot of resources available at our disposal to actually see where this development is going to happen. You can look at stuff like OCPs, which are official community plans. I also have access to tools to see where development permits are being pulled, and that will also give you an indication of where people are looking to develop. So, I consider this a really important one, and that is do your homework for the neighborhood you're considering living in. Because you don't want any sort of nasty surprises like that. So on to number 4. Okay, and number 4 is going to be buyers waiting for the perfect home to hit the market. This is something, especially with first-time buyers or people that are, just starting to dip their toes into real estate. Their expectation is that their first home is going to be that perfect home, maybe even, their forever home here. And if you spent any time in the real estate market here in the Lower Mainland or Fraser Valley, you'll see that, because the prices tend to be quite high, is that getting into, let's say, a detached house as your first home now just is extremely challenging, unless, you have the income to either back it up or maybe some help from family or whatever it is. But either way, the amount of funds required is going to be significant. That doesn't mean you can't get there. You can absolutely climb the property ladder, and I know some people kind of don't like that idea, but it is something that people here do. They start with their condo or townhouse. After they pay down the mortgage, build up equity, pull out that money, and then boom, slam it down on, an upsize if they need it. And so in order to get there, though, your first home isn't going to be that perfect home. What I generally recommend, and this is an exercise that I do with buyers that I work with, is, let's say, I'm working with a couple. I will ask each of them to write down their top 5 must-haves for the property, right? And these are things where they're like, hey, I really want my home to have this. Okay, perfect. Once both people have done that, I now ask them, okay, now reduce that number to 3. So that way we know that when we're out looking for homes, this is what we're looking for. Like, each home needs to have these 3, and then if it has, like any of the other 2, that's even better. But look for a home that is probably about like 80% of what you really want. Unless, of course, what you really want is something that is, in your budget, then by all means, try and go out and get it. But the thing is, if you are holding out for that perfect home, you absolutely need to be ready to make a move when it hits the market. I know from even personal experience, but also with other clients that I've worked with, people that have been waiting for a home for 4 or 5 years, and had they done pretty much anything at any point since then, and I'm serious about that 5-year number, they would have a couple $100,000 in equity. They'd probably maybe even look at the option of owning a second property, whatever it is, but instead held out, prices got up, they got priced out, and and now what is available to them isn't what they want. So it can definitely be a tough one. So don't wait for the perfect home. You can get there, but it's probably not going to be your first one. And for number 5, and this one is probably going to be applicable to just about anybody watching this or looking to get in their first home, and that is not understanding their strata rules, depreciation reports, the strata docs, anything related to strata. And I know this is a pretty in-depth one, and there is a lot going on here, but anytime I've had a client that is buying a home in a strata, I always say half of what you're buying is the home and the other half is the strata, and you want to make sure that you're buying into a good strata, because a good strata over time can help keep the value of your home high. It can increase the value of your home, or if the strata is poorly managed, it can actually cost you money, make it much harder to sell. There's a lot of positives or negatives depending on how well run the strata is. One thing that is generally inescapable though is paying those monthly strata fees. So you're definitely gonna want to budget for that. But yeah, it's really important. You want to know what the bylaws are going to be in any strata you're buying in, and that's going to be from what your rental restrictions might be, pet restrictions. Those are some of the 2 of the more common and important ones you see. Another document that I really like to go over when my clients are purchasing in a condo or a townhouse, especially one that is between the ages of, let's say, 23 to 34 years old, is the depreciation report, and that is going to be a big one. For starters, you want to know how much money is in the CRF, which is the contingency reserve fund. Part of each of your monthly strata payments actually goes into that generally, and that is a fund that the strata uses to pay for things the strata uses, whether that's strata management. Sometimes they might use it to top up something for insurance, but it pays for routine maintenance. It can be used to pay for bigger projects, but I want to see how much is there. Generally, I like to see around $3,500 in a CRF per door in the strata. If there's more, fantastic. And if there's less, well, that's not always a concern if there's a good reason for it. If there's less because the strata just did a ton of work, okay, awesome. But if there's less and there hasn't been a lot of work done, then I start to get kind of concerned. The other thing is, in between those ages, especially as you get closer to that 30-year range, especially, 26 to 32 is when you start to see some big, expensive projects in a strata come up. And you really want to know that the strata that you're buying into has, allocated enough funds to adequately help offset most of those costs. Just because the strata draws a levy doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Some stratas will actually choose to draw levies with some form of consistency, and not like huge levies, but it could be, $1,000 here, it could be whatever there, instead of actually raising the overall monthly fees. Some people think that it actually makes their strata more attractive down the road when they decide to sell, because their monthly fees are, instead of being $500 a month, they're only $360. But yeah, and there is a lot more to touch on with strata docs, but the last little point here is go through the minutes. Minutes, especially AGMs and SGMs, will give you a pretty good idea about what the strata has been planning for that year, what sort of work they're looking at doing. But also, as you go through the monthly minutes, you're going to see if there's any sort of bickering or infighting and that sort of thing in the building. Generally, if I can avoid that, I do. But if that's something that maybe doesn't bother you, then by all means. But it's just really good to know what's going on in a building you might be considering buying into. And yeah, so that's number 5. All right, and we're also going to give you a bonus 6th mistake that I often see come up. And this is kind of going to be a combination of 2 of them. And that is going to be ignoring long-term needs and overlooking future resale value. And this is one that, especially with first-time buyers, can come up pretty regularly. Usually because there are budgetary constraints quite often. And so you might not be able to, get the 3-bedroom place that you want to start with. But for example, there are 2 things you can't change about whatever home you buy, and that's the home's location and the size of the home. right? You need to absolutely be okay with those two things. Let's say, you have the option at, like a newer, nicer 1-bedroom, or maybe you can look at something that's in an older building, but you do get that 2nd bedroom in it. Some people, and hey, if you're fine with the 1-bedroom and you're like, hey, I'm not planning on, I'm not gonna have anybody move in, I'm not planning on, growing a family in the next couple of years, whatever it is, that 1-bedroom is fantastic. And when you go to sell, because it is newer, there'll be a bit of a market for it because it is a 1-bedroom place. But you really might want to take a look at that 2-bedroom for a couple of reasons. The 2nd bedroom is going to give you more space, and the 2nd bedroom, so it's going to give you, some space to grow, or maybe you want to have a home office, whatever it is. But then there's also the future resale value to consider, because when you go to sell it down the road, when you decide to upsize, the market for 2-bedroom places is generally larger than 1-bedroom places, and the demand for 2-bedroom places is also generally higher. It's going to probably yield you a better return when you go to sell. And so, these are some things that I think a lot of buyers tend to overlook. When you're buying a home, you're not just buying a place for you to live. You have to look at it as an investment in yourself, because it's certainly going to cost you a fair bit of money. And you want to know that, at the end of it, there is going to be that payoff for you. Buying your first home is a really exciting opportunity and a process. And by avoiding some of these common pitfalls that I've outlined here, you can actually kind of help ensure that the whole process and the journey is one that you will remember, and one that will be actually fun to partake in. I know there will certainly be times where it doesn't feel that way. It's normal for somebody to feel stressed when making the biggest purchase, you're likely ever to make up until that point. But avoid these pitfalls and enjoy the ride. If you found this video helpful and you did like the information that I had, or you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. And if you could, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you want more content just like this, please let me know, maybe some ideas you'd like to see. I do get back to people, and I really do like making informative content for people just like you to just further educate you in your real estate journey. So as always, see you in the next video.